lights up just a little bit, please? Hi, my name's Kelly Branigan. I live in the town of Middlefield. You may have heard of Middlefield recently in the news. We are successfully defending our rights in our town to say what kind of development we want and what we don't want. And that's very important for our town. I'm a registered nurse. I specialized in critical care and in education. I'm also a real estate broker. How did I get involved in all of this?
Can't hear you in the back, Kelly.
Okay. If I can get this closer. Is that better?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. We watched the movie Gasland. It was on HBO, like everybody else probably has. And when we watched it, we said, wow, those poor people having to live like that, and then promptly forgot about it. That was until a couple of things happened. My husband went to work in Pennsylvania. He took a job there in Towanda in the heart of gas drilling country. At the same time, we had gas drilling seismic crews basically sneaking around Middlefield. There are no regulations on seismic crews, so they didn't have to tell the town they were there, they didn't have to tell the neighbors they were there. It just took very alert neighbors to find out what was happening. If anyone has told you that you won't know gas drilling's around, you won't see the impacts, they're either lying or they've only visited down there. It makes a huge difference to live with this type of heavy industry 24/7. My husband lived it for 2.5 years. He lived with the trucks, he lived with the noise, the lights, the transient workers. He talked to the folks there. Some folks were happy with it, a lot more were having big problems. So if anyone tells you that it's gone quickly, you know, a couple of weeks, I don't call 2.5 years anything quick. New York State's DEC in the SGI said impacts on community character defined as the economic, demographic, and social characteristics of the affected communities are expected to be significant. We want to know how will this affect our communities and how it'll affect us. You know, we hear a lot about the water contamination. You know, we're hearing more and more about air. We don't hear a lot about what it means to us as a community member. You know, why did you move to your community? I've been an upstate New York native my entire life. I've lived in Middlefield for over 20 years. We bought our land so we could improve it, so we could have the peace and quiet of rural living. We specifically settled in Middlefield because it had zoning and we were protected. And any improvements we made to our land, that money would be there. It was an investment for us and for our children. If we had known the potential of our area to be turned into a heavy industrial zone, we never would have bought property there. How many of you, knowing that you were going to be moving next to a compressor station or a pipeline or a drill pad, would spend that kind of money to do so? You know, we hear a lot about property values. You know, property values aren't going to increase with those things. No one's going to want to take the chance of moving into a contaminated area. You all have the right to information. We hear a lot about fear-mongering. We hear a lot of nonsense. Information is a good thing. And if anyone tries to keep you from hearing information, you have to ask yourself why they're doing so. Why do they not want you to have that information? Why are they shutting down any kind of discussion? We hear a lot about anecdotes, and the industry pretty much disparages anecdotes. Well, that's just an anecdote. You know, where are the facts? In the medical profession, we worry about anecdotes. When we start seeing a lot of things going wrong, we ask why. Anecdotes are important. They tell us that there's a problem. When we start seeing reactions to drugs or procedures, we look at those anecdotes to see if there's a trend, to see if we need to study something further. If this industry was in a medical, if it was a procedure or a drug, it would have been shut down already for further study with all the anecdotes that are out there. So don't let anybody tell you that anecdotes don't make a difference, because they do. Also in the medical profession, there's something called informed consent. When you have a procedure, you have the right by law to know all the good outcomes and all the potentially bad outcomes. Your physician has got to explain these to you. That doesn't happen with the gas drilling industry. They have to disclose everything to the SEC. They tell them about the chances for contamination, explosions, everything that can go wrong, but they tell you it's safe, don't worry your pretty head about it. Don't worry about it, it's fine. You have the right to informed consent. And in my opinion, you have the right to say no if those risks aren't what you want to take for your family or your community. You know, and we also hear the canard, look at the science. Well, we are looking at the science. We're looking at the real science, and the science is telling us there are big problems. This isn't made up. The industry doesn't like the science. In fact, some of the science we're looking at is the industry's own science, as you'll hear from Mr. Northrup. They know there are problems. And we're seeing around the nation, in states that have been doing gas drilling, increasing problems all the time, with contamination, with health problems, with migration of these toxic plumes underground. We're seeing that out in Montana. Things that they say can't happen are happening. They're happening every day. Gas drilling, you hear they've done it for 60 years. They've done this fracking, millions of wells, no problems. I think the first well was done in Pennsylvania of this type of drilling in 2005. Less than a decade. We're going to see these things, the cumulative effects, more and more as the numbers of wells increase and as time goes by. Personally, I really don't want to be a guinea pig. Someone said to me at one time at one meeting that we need to study our baseline health. We need to see what people are doing now, what their health is like. Then if gas drilling comes and they start getting sick, we'll know why. I don't know about you, that doesn't really make me feel very good. I don't want to know once I come down with cancer that it was gas drilling. Oh, great. I'm so glad to know that. Everything I'm about as a nurse is prevention. Helping people to maintain their health, to not get sick. If they are sick, to help them improve and get better. It's not, let's wait and see what happens. We have to look forward to what happens with our children, what happens to future generations. More and more studies are being done on toxicity in children. What environmental toxins are doing, not only to them when they're young, but in the womb before they're born. And they're finding some serious impacts, both in their health and in their mental development. Every study out there says we've got to stop putting toxins in the environment. These things will carry on through generations through the mother. So why do we want to add more toxins in the ground and into our air, knowing what we know now? New studies just came out about air pollution in regards to heart attacks. They're showing that even a short-term exposure to air pollution can increase the risk for a heart attack, even in young people with no history of having heart disease. Down in Texas, in the Barnett Shale, in Texas itself, breast cancer rates have gone down. Invasive breast cancer has decreased. That's great, except for those counties where the heaviest drilling is occurring. In those counties, invasive breast cancer rates have risen dramatically. Is it coincidence? The industry will say those are just anecdotes. Asthma rates in many of these counties have gone up 25% in some cases. All of these things not only impact us as people and impact our families, but they impact us as a society because we have to pay those costs. They come out of our pockets as taxpayers. So in these times when we're looking forward of how to stop these things from happening, the industry's going full bore. They want to get in, get it done before you know what's hit you. And that's what happened in Pennsylvania. Those folks admit down there that they really didn't know what they were getting into. We talk about community effects. I'm not going to go into great detail. Transient workers. 70% of the workers hired are transient. They're not local. The jobs go with the rigs. Those jobs don't stay around here as permanent, sustainable jobs. When the rig goes, the job goes too. Increased crime, not just Pennsylvania, but anywhere the industry has come with their workers, crime comes along too. You know, violent crimes, prostitution, and with the prostitution we do see increases in sexually transmitted disease. Why do we care about that? Because that is an impact on our public health systems. Our hospitals have to take care of workers who don't have health insurance. Many times don't know what they've been exposed to. Our healthcare workers become exposed to those same things. Doctors can't treat a lot of these illnesses because there have been no studies. You know, we're seeing all kinds of things, you know, rashes, nosebleeds, mysterious signs and symptoms, respiratory disorders, you know, along with the big things like cancers. You know, cancer clusters in places you wouldn't expect it. Problems with neonates, you know, with labor and delivery. Things that you normally see once in a while, mysteriously we're seeing more and more of them. Problem is they're not being studied. Down in Pennsylvania, there is no health registry. There's no way that they keep track of these health concerns. When people come in, they go to their doctors. Many times they don't know what they've been exposed to. They don't know how to treat them. And now there's something called Act 13 down there, which effectively gags physicians. They can go to the gas companies to find out what kind of chemicals they've been using, but they can't share that. They can't share it with their patients. They can't share it with other physicians. They can't share it with communities. They likened it to a community being exposed to a radioactive event, and they can't tell anybody. You know, we need these studies. We need this information. We need to know what's happening. We look at the water buffaloes just in Pennsylvania alone. How many families are living with replacement water? They don't keep track of it. There is no mechanism in Pennsylvania to keep track of how many people have replacement water, how many people are having to buy bottled water for their families. And it's happening. You know, folks have gone around and counted the water buffaloes. There have been estimates, you know, 90 to 200. Now they hide them in little sheds. Sometimes they have to be in the sheds because you have to keep them heated in the wintertime. As a community member, if you get stuck with a water buffalo, if your water goes bad, you will have to buy your replacement water many times, and you have to keep your water buffalo heated, which means an increase in your electric costs. You know, they're seeing anywhere from $200 to $400 in the wintertime, so their water buffaloes don't freeze. They have methane stacks in their yards to vent their water wells from the methane that has migrated in. People are finding things that Dr. Bishop talked about, barium, strontium, arsenic, toluene, in their water wells. Many of them did not have their water tested prior to the gas companies coming. They never had a problem with their water. Now they do. Their water's turned color, their water's gone bad, and the gas companies basically say it was pre-existing. Prove to us that it wasn't that way before we came. What does that mean to you? If gas drilling comes, there are certain things that you have got to be aware of and things that you have to do to protect yourselves. Water testing is one thing. You will have to go with a certified state lab. There has to be a chain of custody with your water sample. You just can't do it yourself or have anybody do it. They have to test for numerous components. We don't know them all. They do their best to guess at what the most common things are. They do suggest that you do a baseline testing in the spring and in the fall so you can get a good range of where your water well is normally. Once gas drilling commences, you will have to continue to test your water because with what we've seen in Pennsylvania and other areas, you never know when that contamination will happen. If you do sell your home, whoever buys it will then have to continue with that water testing. Sometimes you know something's wrong. You know, it turns colors, your animals get sick. That's how many people found out they had contamination. Animal service are sentinels. As we've seen from Dr. Bamberger and Oswald and their looks at animal health, you know, they're seeing serious problems there with birth defects and animal deaths. You know, animals are sentinels. They're warning us that there's something wrong. They have shorter lifespans than we do, shorter reproductive cycles, and there needs to be more study done to find out why this is happening. Another thing, to go back to the water testing for costs, it will cost you anywhere from $600 to $700 for one test. I had my pond and my well tested. It was $1,300. Merry Christmas. Radon testing. If you haven't tested your basement for radon, you will need to do that. We have radon here. Somehow it seeps up through those cracks in the rocks from down below and gets into our basements. It's the second leading cause of lung cancer in the United States. So you need to know your baseline radon numbers in your own home and then monitor that. Because we don't know what's going to happen with all the fracturing going on in that basement rock. Whereas Dr. Bishop said, there are a lot of nasty things. We're seeing some recommendations now for at least one person in the family to have baseline blood work. The reason for that is to prove that you did not have pre-existing drilling chemicals in your bloodstream. Because we're seeing in Pennsylvania and other areas when people are going to their physician and they're turning up with barium, strontium, arsenic, again, how do you know that it wasn't there before? Prove to us that you didn't have that in your bloodstream before we came. We don't know if insurance companies will pay for that. We don't know the costs. That's something that we're just looking into now. You're going to want to take inventory of your basement even before seismic testing happens. You want to get a water test done too before seismic testing, if you even know they're doing it. And the big question is, will your insurance company cover damage from seismic testing? Will they cover damage to your property if your neighbor does gas drilling and it leaks onto your property? It ruins your water well. Talk to your insurance companies, because we are seeing more and more pollution clauses, pollution exclusion. Folks that are leasing their property have got to be really careful as well. Gas companies are great at reassuring people, oh, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it. And then when something goes wrong, find out that they're left holding the bag. They are responsible. And it's awful hard to go after these gas companies when we have multiple layers, LLCs. Are they still going to be around? The gas company that was an exploration company in our area, they were a penny stock company. They didn't have enough money to hire lawyers. They told us that. So did they have enough money to clean up the spills? They were doing water testing off people's garden hoses and then saying that they had high lead levels. I asked somebody one time, they were talking about a 40-page lease that they had signed, or actually that they had written for the gas companies to sign. It hadn't been signed yet, bragging about all the environmental protections, everything that was written in to protect them. And I said, well, protect you from what? And they said, well, we don't trust the gas companies. My other question was, well, that's great if they sign it, but who protects your neighbors? Their leases don't protect you. You'll hear about compulsory integration, where you are forced to allow drilling under your property. You can't negotiate. You can't say no. They just come in and take it for their own profit. You hear about people talking about property rights. I have the rights to do what I want to with my property. But I don't see them decrying the fact that you don't have the right to do what you do not want to do with your property. No one has the right to do anything on their property that's going to harm the value or the peaceful enjoyment of your property. That's part of your bundle of rights in real estate. You know, it's speculation. I heard a lot of the gas companies, they spoke in one town and they talked about ad valorem taxes. Well, you're going to get $300,000–$400,000 out of a well. And then they went on further in the talk to tell the town that they didn't need a moratorium because there probably isn't any gas there anyway. Somebody in the audience said, well, number one, where did you get those figures that you're quoting? And they said, well, we get those down from Pennsylvania, from the really great wells. And they said, and you just told us that we probably don't have any gas here. So you're going to drill a lot of wells, punch a lot of holes in the ground, put a lot of chemicals down, and if you don't find any gas, you walk away and leave that all behind for us. And that's something that you've got to think about. You know, we're seeing a lot of talk about mortgage issues. Greg May from Tompkins County Trust did a great paper. Elizabeth Radow, a lawyer, wrote for the New York State Bar Association about issues of mortgages and concerns. We don't have answers to those things. Many folks who have signed leases were never told that they are violating the terms of their mortgage. There are issues with actually getting a mortgage if you have turned your property into basically an industrial zone. Those mortgages, pretty much all of them get sold on the secondary market, and they want to know that that property is going to retain its value. So those are questions we don't have answers to as of yet. In our town in Middlefield, I think there are a lot of misconceptions. People thought that, we ran around like crazy people, waving our hands in the air and all in a panic and wanted to spam gas drilling because we were afraid of it. Well, we had meetings, we had information sessions, we had the gas companies come in, we studied it. We did a build-out study of what Middlefield would look like with gas drilling, high impact to low impact. This wasn't something that we just did on a whim. And I think it's important to remember too, in Middlefield, we've never allowed heavy industry. It's not part of our vision. We've had a master plan since the 70s, and that master plan says Middlefield shall be protected for future generations. We'll protect our agricultural land, protect our forests, protect what Middlefield is. So we've never allowed it. And for an industry to come in and basically threaten us with suing us, telling us we can't do what we're doing, wanting us to roll over and just say, okay, do whatever you want to do. Come in here, bring your trucks, bring your workers. Well, we said no. We felt we had the right to say no. This is not the vision we wanted for our town. And they sued us, and they lost. They sued Dryden, and they lost. Any town board member that is not listening to their constituents, that's very wrong. We hear about fear-mongering, and what are you hearing for people going to town boards? We're going to sue you for takings. We're going to sue you because you're stopping us from harvesting our minerals. Well, if you've read anything on takings lawsuits, that really doesn't hold water. So who are the ones threatening? And is it all about the money? Anyone who reads any of the scientific information, and it comes out daily, it's overwhelming sometimes how much information there is. Anyone who takes the time to read that, and every town board member should be doing that, because you serve your town. You serve all the people in your town, not just big landowners. Land doesn't vote. This isn't feudal England. I don't care if someone lives in an apartment, if they have a quarter acre, or they have 500 acres. They all have equal rights of protection. And until we know that this industry can do this without polluting our water, without polluting our air, without sickening our children and future generations, that they'll be there to clean up their messes, that this gas actually is going to be for our use in the United States and not shipped over to China and India, which is where it's going. I just read something yesterday where from India they came over, they're making a deal for the liquefied gas to go off the eastern seaboard, off to India for their use, because they can make a lot of money selling it to them. So when people wave the flag and say it's your patriotic duty to do this, drill a well, bring a soldier home, I laugh at that one. My husband's a veteran, and he asked somebody in Pennsylvania who had one of those signs the question, okay, so where are all the soldiers? And they said, what? He said, well, your sign. Drill a gas well, bring a soldier home. How many have you brought home? And that's nothing but industry speak and propaganda. It has nothing to do with bringing soldiers home. It has everything to do with the gas industry making as much money as they can and doing it as cheaply as possible. So anyone that cares about their neighbors and cares about their community has got to look at the facts and not the industry jargon and nonsense. We're past that. We have to look out for each other. I know that there are hard times. Everybody has to pay taxes. We know what the farmers are going through. And I find it interesting that they're saying it's going to save farms when the latest study in Pennsylvania has shown that the numbers of farms in gas drilling areas have actually decreased. The numbers of dairy cows have decreased. It's not saving farms. So anyone in any community Put the brakes on this. Look at the facts and look at the science. Gas is at its lowest levels right now, price-wise. It's not economical for the companies. There's time. We don't want to be guinea pigs. If this ever is going to happen in New York, we need to wait until it can be done, right, if that's possible. And anyone who is going full bore, full steam ahead, drill now, drill here, drill it up, is wrong. And they know they're wrong.
5 minutes.
So look at the information, talk to your neighbors, talk to your town boards, town board members, listen to your residents. Over and over and over again, when surveys are done, we're seeing people don't want this. They don't want their communities turned into industrial zones. They don't want what's proven to happen with a boom-bust cycle. Every community that has done extraction ends up worse off in the long run. The jobs aren't sustainable. The gas isn't sustainable. When it's gone, it's gone. All the buildup that happens, what happens when the industry leaves? And look at Pennsylvania. They did oil, they did coal, they did lumber. They never got any better. Gas is going to be the same way. They have their big boom and they're right back down at the bottom again with more pollution. We hear about the great benefits to the state. Why is it with all the money in Pennsylvania from gas drilling that they're cutting funding to schools, to colleges, social services, housing? There are homeless people now because they can't afford the rents anymore. Where's all the money? Roads. Texas, which has a severance tax on the state level and has done this for a long time, a study just came out, they're $2 billion in the hole for road repairs. Even with the money they're getting from the industry, it's not enough to pay for roads. And we don't have a severance tax in New York State. So the more you learn, the more you say to yourself, wait a minute, time out. This is not the right time. I thank you all for coming and listening. Talk to each other. We all are neighbors. We're all upstate New Yorkers. We all love where we live. We love our homes. And we don't want to see them destroyed for the gas industry or any industry that comes to take and not to be a part of our community. Thank you very much.